Hello, everyone, and welcome to On the Fringe. Today in Wisconsin, it's winter. Our motorcycles are put away, and this is a great day to talk about the pioneers of women's adventure motorcycling. The first women to ride across America on motorcycles didn't do it to enjoy the scenery. These women pioneers were out to prove that women could do what society told them they could not. 106 years ago, two women set out on motorcycle with a sidecar, destined to travel from Brooklyn, New York, all the way to San Francisco, California. They were mother and daughter team Effie and Avis Hotchkiss. Their motorcycle, an 11F Harley Davidson 3-speed with a sidecar. The Harley Davidson Model 11F used the upgraded 11-horsepower V-twin engine that Harley Davidson improved for 1915. The engine had a mechanically driven oil pump for more positive lubrication, a major improvement because it eliminated the need for the rider to work the hand pump that had been required prior to this model to maintain pressure in the oil tank while riding. The mechanically driven pump did all of the work and did it in a more reliable way. Even though the 11F's engine had this new feature, the bike qualified as the poor man's Harley of the time because it lacked the new electrical system found on the Harley-Davidson 11J. Using the old acetylene burning lights saved 11F owners $35 compared to the 11J. The year 1915. The Hotchkisses carried their own tools for repair and a jar of Atlantic seawater, which upon their destination they poured into the Pacific Ocean. One year after the Hotchkisses completed their coast-to-coast journey, a pair of sisters named Augusta and Adeline Van Buren, heirs to the 8th President of the United States, Martin Van Buren, rode a similar journey from Brooklyn, New York to San Francisco, California. The Van Buren sisters traveled along the Lincoln Highway, which was pre-infrastructure and more of a series of dirt, field, and graveled roads through cow pastures and barren land than an actual road or highway. The Van Buren sisters were nicknamed Gussie and Addie. Each rode astride their own Indian Power Plus 1,000cc motorcycles, which sold new in 1916 for $275. The Indian Power Plus looked more like an electric bicycle than a motorcycle. It was chain-driven with a powerful 1,000cc V-twin magneto-ignition, acetylene gas headlight, and would use a quart of oil every 100 to 400 miles. The Indian topped out at a speed of 60 miles per hour. The 22-inch white-wall tires on the Indian Power Plus were designed for adventure travel. The Van Burens dressed in military-style leggings and leather riding breeches, which were both a huge social taboo for women. In 1916, it was illegal in many states for women to wear men's clothing, and the Van Burens were arrested several times during their cross-country adventure. Gussie and Addie were truly some of the first women's rights advocates at a time before women even had the right to vote. Almost 2 decades after the Hotchkisses and Van Burens completed their coast-to-coast adventures came Bessie Stringfield. Bessie was the first African-American woman to ride across America by motorcycle. Her later nickname was Motorcycle Queen of Miami. Bessie was the first woman of color to cross the United States solo on a motorcycle. During Bessie's 82-year life, she owned 27 Harley Davidson cruisers and one 1928 Indian Scout she had gotten while she was in high school. Harley, though, was certainly her true love. Bessie, a devout woman of faith, had no one to teach her how to ride a motorcycle. When Bessie was 16 years old, she prayed to Jesus, and in a dream, she received instruction on how to shift gears and ride a motorcycle. That's how she learned to ride her 1928 Indian Scout. Can you imagine yourself learning to ride a motorcycle by faith and dream alone? Bessie was a living example of faith and resilience in action in the 1930s and 40s. Not only were women second-class citizens, but women of color were treated with extreme prejudice and unfairness. Bessie could not stay in hotels and had to either sleep on her handlebars at filling stations or stay with other people of color who would welcome her along her journey. We don't really know, but perhaps Bessie Stringfield used the Green Book. The Green Book was developed in 1936 by a black postal worker named Victor Hugo Green, who published the first edition of the Negro Motorist Green Book. At the time, the segregation-era guide was meant to direct black New York City residents to businesses they could frequent without facing the covert discrimination and threats of violence they encountered, even up north. The Green Book, as it is most often called, became an invaluable resource to black people living in and traveling through America. It cataloged black-owned businesses around the country, directing motorists to establishments that served a wide range of functions and provided safety to people of color. All three of these groups of women are supreme role models, activists, self-realized, and heroes of the women's rights and civil rights movements. We can learn a great deal from honoring their stories and their lives. Thank you for joining us for part 1 of the Pioneers of Women's Adventure Motorcycling. Please hit the like and subscribe buttons and leave us your positive comments. Stay tuned for part 2 of the Pioneers of Women's Adventure Motorcycling coming up right now. We have more on Bessie, Addie, Gussie, Effie, and Avis, plus more exciting stories about brave and interesting women. Thank you, and see you real soon.